I planned a trip to Saskatchewan. On the way, I would always go past this one house over and over. In fact, I've visited this house dozens of times before. This particular day, as I was driving by, the house was situated up on a hill, and there were big white clouds forming behind it. And I was gonna bypass it and keep on going, but the image kept on drawing me back. Stepping out of the Jeep, I heard the roar of a ATV coming up. And then this big ball of plaid pulled up alongside me, and I was like, oh no, I'm in so much crap. ATV pulls up, and out pops this guy with a neck brace on and a twisted cowboy hat and bandana, and so yeah, he popped up. He goes, hi. I'm like, oh, hi. I go, I just had to shoot this house. It was just really looking really good, and I hope you don't mind. And he's like, no, I'll take you on up. He and I popped in the ATV, went up this small hill, and as we were doing it, he began to tell me about the history of the place. And that's how I was introduced to Avery Stewart. Not much is known about Avery. Like, there's not a lot of things written down about him. So a lot of the information that we're receiving about him is secondhand. Avery was a large man, and I did some research on trying to find out a little bit more about Avery, and I did manage to find one photo, albeit it's black and white, and he's from far away, and he's sitting down. But you could tell that he's a quite tall man, very slender, in the one image that I found.
Hi, my name's Roger MacKenzie. I'm a cattle rancher in the Special Areas. I was born and raised here. Had this land for the last 40 years, and the old fellow that lived here was Avery Stewart. I was pretty young. I don't remember a lot about him, but I remember that he was a very big man, and it seemed like everybody liked him.
So as Roger and I were touring the property, Roger told me that Avery Stewart had actually built the place with his own hands. Roger was explaining how the place was built and how it's still standing well over 100 years later. For example, he would use sawdust and hay and newspaper and mud for the insulation in between the walls, which was crazy because a lot of the stuff was still sticking out.
He was a great carpenter, as you can see by the house. He helped a lot of the neighbors build their barns and their houses and everything else.
The year Avery died escapes me. I can't remember the year he died, but he's buried over at the local cemetery, and it's quite just a humble grave. It's just a small grave with a concrete polished stone marker, and it's actually a nice little spot. The cemetery is beautiful in the prairie landscape. So one of the itches, I guess, that would need to be scratched with this project is to find out as much information about these characters as possible. Finding the headstone, or finding the grave site, or finding the cemetery, and walking around, and then you finally find that final spot where they're resting, I think is the final nail in the coffin, so to speak, about who these people were, how it puts all the stories together, and we can now put not only a face to the name, but now a location to where this person has now resided for eternity. Roger is a picture-perfect portrait of a cowboy of Alberta. He's a rancher. He's been a rancher his whole life, and he's got some pretty hardcore stories too. In fact, when I had met him, he had broken his neck, so for the second time.
Well, 5 or 6 years ago, I got bucked off a horse and landed on my neck. And being that I was a cowboy all my life, I figured, well, if you just give it time, it'll heal up. After 5 months, I finally went to the doctor, and he sent me for a CT scan. And about 2 months later, when I got to talk to him again, he said it was a compound fracture. And here on July 6th, I was running to get a gate, hit a couple holes in consecutive with 2 different steps and did a face plant and broke the bone in the C3. Not much you can do about it, you just live with it because it's been that way all my life. You hurt yourself, you just live with it and keep going.
Roger's a rare man. You don't meet too many people like him very often anymore, and there's gonna be less and less of people like him in the future.
After, I would say, maybe the next generation under me, you won't see cowboying as you know it. You'll see rodeo riding, but you won't see the range cowboy as you know it now. Because I mean, I can remember riding 30 above weather, no water, stop at a dugout, take your bandana, put it across your face and suck up a little bit of water. It was what you did. You don't see that anymore because everybody carries everything they need with them. Yeah, it's I guess you'd call us a dying breed. There's still lots of us around right now, but most of us are getting a little age.
One of the issues that Roger brought up was the fact that these places are being vandalized. They're being vandalized by an unlikely culprit, and that would be artists. A lot of people are going onto these places and they're tearing off wood for wood projects, whether it be picture frames or just souvenir hunting, what have you. So doorknobs have been missing, window frames have been pulled out, and certain artists will go and they'll start pulling off a piece of wood and saying, well, this won't work, and they'll discard it, pull off another piece, this won't work, then they'll discard it. Next thing you know, this place is getting torn down, by people who think that they are honoring these places through, art projects.
When they break a board, they just throw it in a pile and go after another one. And it's very discouraging to see a landmark like this going downhill so hard and so fast. And it's only because of people wanting to make stuff from these old boards, like picture frames and whatever else. I know they make little signs with them and whatnot, but to me, it's sad because it's part of history that we're losing. Every year you see more damage done from people taking stuff off, and pretty soon it's just gonna fall apart. Which is, I guess, part of nature, but to me it's a sad part of nature.
Roger's portrait was easy. Not just the aesthetics of Roger's face is what makes him, a good subject for a portrait, but it's also his attitude. His attitude is, take the picture, whatever, this is who I am, I really don't care, and move on. And it was great. Those are the type of people I like to photograph. The light was right. I think it was high noon. There was a lot of clouds in the sky. Shooting Roger, I just got down low. I put him in the foreground. Roger's not a big guy. He's not a tall man, but he's a large character. And getting low in front of Roger brings out his large character. I think what's really ironic about the portrait as well is that Roger's not a very large man, but Avery was a very large man, living in a small little house on a hill for well over 50 years. When composing the image with Avery and Roger in mind, it's two very large characters connected to a very small house. So filming here today, my portion, we're shooting in this barn of my father-in-law. Ron Carline. Roger and Ron are very similar in the fact that they're very matter of fact, they're very straightforward, they're very gruff, but if you get them to start opening up and talking, they have lots of stories. But that's the trick. The trick is you have to get them at the right place at the right time and warm them up a bit, and then they open up. Ron recently passed away at the age of 85, and albeit I only knew Ron for, oh boy, about 5 years. He was an incredible male figure in my life, and he was also a great grandfather to my son William. And yeah, it's just kind of nice that I had approached Ron about participating in one of these episodes, but Ron is like, I never got a straight answer from Ron whether or not he wanted to do it or not. But I did manage to get Ron to sit for a portrait, luckily, and he sat right here at this spot, and it was his character definitely came on the portrait as well. So it's nice that we're talking about Avery Stewart and Roger MacKenzie and having it here in the barn, because it just brings everything together about how we're losing people, and people aren't going to be around for very much longer. And yeah, Ron, yeah, he was a good guy. It's interesting, when I first started doing photography, when I was learning the actual technical portions of photography, photos are completely different then than what they were now. Back then it was soul searching, but now it's about respect and honor and stories and making that human connection, not just with myself, but also with farmers and people who are viewing the picture and reading the stories, because at the end of the day, I think it's all about the story. For me, that's what makes a photo, is if you can stop people and get them to appreciate it and get them to, honor the history.